our weatherman, Paul, is in my most recent article last Thursday. If you get a chance, read it. But Carol Davis sort of stole my thunder a little bit because I start out 27 years ago, exactly, I discovered bowling. Now if you add up all the arithmetic, that means I was 30 years old already, and I didn't bowl as a kid. In fact, I knew nothing about bowling, but one of my neighbors, his name was Charlie Tarnapole, got sick, he had to have an operation. Somebody from his team called me and said, would you come down and take his place at Oak Park Lanes Thursday nights? And I said, well, I don't know anything about bowling. He said, hey, the guys will show you what to do. And sure enough, they did, and I was hooked, and I had a love affair with bowling ever since. Now, one thing about bowling is some people may think it's on the decline, but bowling has one very important, but very, very powerful thing going for it. It's fun. We all have fun bowling, no matter if you're young or old, high score, low score, it's fun to bowl. So I actually, I started writing sort of by accident. One of my bowlers from my league came up to me, opened up his wallet, and pulled out a newspaper clipping he's been carrying around in his wallet for 20 years. It was tattered and yellow, but it had his name and his bowling score. To him, that was the most important thing right there, that he had that with him all the time, and he cherished it. And I thought, you know, this is important, to have something that people can see their name in print, even if it's you know, a bowling score. But that's how I started. I sold that idea to the Observer and Centric newspapers, and the rest is history. I see so many familiar faces, and a lot of you that I've written stories about, but Ken Cossack comes to mind because he shot a .878, which was, you think about it, there's only 2 of his shots that were not strikes. He had 34 out of a possible 36. That's amazing. Several things have happened over the years. One of them was a woman bowler in an afternoon league shot a .279. Well, that's fine, but it was 100 pins over average, and my editor took the story, and I don't know if you can see this well enough, but he wrote, her name was Helene Robbins. Robbins sings the .279 tune. A couple days later, she called me up and she says, you know, I went around to all the newsstands and bought up every copy I could find to send to my relatives around the country. So it meant that much to her, but mainly the paper couldn't understand how come the circulation jumped up so quick. Then there's another favorite occasion. Jean Cobain called me from Mayflower Lanes about one of her ladies' afternoon league bowlers. Myrtle Ringe shot, well, she was 92 years old and she made the 710. I said, Jean, are you sure it wasn't a 6-7 or a 410? She says, Al, I've been around bowling for 40 years. I know what a 710 looks like. Here's a 710, and she made it. So I interviewed her, and sure enough, here's a frail little lady, and I said, well, how'd you do it? And she said, well, I was only trying to hit the 7-pin, and I just rolled the ball as hard as I could, which is like 5 miles an hour. And it rolled down the lane and barely grazed the 7-pin, and it was rocking, and it rocked and fell over and rolled around and took out the 10-pin. And that's what everybody had seen, and they couldn't believe it, but she did it. So we all think that if you have to make the 7-10, you throw the ball as hard as you possibly can, and you might get it to bounce. There's another way of doing it. And some stories you get in the mail or by phone or email, and one of them, well, you don't always know what to believe when you hear this or you see it in print. Somebody, you don't know who sent it in, but there was an occasion a year ago. My league was bowling at country lanes. We had lanes 1 to 10, and I was on 9 and 10. And the Sunday Youth Classic, which is Ed Wright's league, was to have the rest of the house. So in the second game, one of the guys said, "Hey, one of those kids has the first 8." Sure enough, you see 8 strikes up on the score, and we watched, and here was this little 12-year-old girl got up there, and she threw another strike in the 9th, and 3 more in the 10th, and the place went crazy. And her mother was there, and I talked to her, and I found out exactly how old she was, her date of birth. The next day I called Mark Miller in Greenville, Wisconsin. He keeps all these records. And I said, is she near the youngest ever to do it? He looked it up and said, she is the youngest in the history of bowling, the youngest female to throw a 300 game. So I called her up. I said, "Are you sitting up or standing?" She said, "I'm standing." I said, "You better sit down." I let her know what she'd done. Well, my good friend Matt Fiorito, I gave him the information. He did a story on it. The Detroit News ran her on the front page of the paper, and one of the TV stations came down and had her bowl and interviewed her and showed her on the 11 o'clock news, and I think that was a great story, but I was there. I know what happened. It was a true story. So actually, bowling has been a fun ride for me, and I've met a lot of wonderful people. Most of them are right here, and I'm overjoyed at being voted into the Detroit Bowling Hall of Fame. It's a great honor, and I have a special place on the wall for my plaque. I want to thank my daughter Debbie and her husband Ron Steenhagen, say please stand, for coming in from Grand Rapids, Michigan, to Grand Rapids. And for my companion of 5 years, Phyllis Malin. Her smile says it all. So thank you very much. It's been a wonderful evening.